What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Top 6 ADP steals was going to be a top 5 video, but then I couldn't get the list down to 5, so you guys get an extra player. As always, if you enjoy the video, then be sure to leave a like. It shows us that you guys approve of the content. So let's start things off with the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was which quarterback had the most interceptable passes last season. The answer was Jared Goff, and Blobfish Blake was the first to get that one right. Today's stat: which wide receiver through Friday, this preseason, has the highest wide receiver grade? All right, let's start this list off with wide receivers, and we're going to go over 3 wide receivers and 3 running backs. We'll start off with Christian Kirk, and we've only seen one drive from Kyler Murray so far this preseason, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we've confirmed that the offense works, right? But we've expected the offense to put up a boatload of fantasy points all offseason. The reports out of camp have all been extremely positive. And then the first drive looked like advertised. The biggest thing I want you guys to understand is how the offense is going to move the ball. There's going to be a ton of quick passes, and that just elevates the floor of every player on this offense. So even if Kirk gets unlucky, in the touchdown department, his receptions are going to be there just because of how they move the ball down the field. Kirk showed flashes last season of what he's capable of with a top 12 true catch rate and a top 20 receiver error conversion ratio. There was a lot of hype on him coming into the draft, and he showed last season, while it wasn't like a dominant rookie campaign, and typically, rookies don't have dominant seasons, he was really good before he was injured, and reports out of camp indicate that he is clearly the top option in this passing game. And he's going to be a productive wide receiver this season. As if we needed any more positive indicators, Arizona faces the most difficult schedule in terms of opponent offensive efficiency. So their opponents are going to be very efficient on offense. However, they face the league's easiest schedule in terms of opponent defensive efficiency. So their opponents are going to score points on them, and since their defense isn't that great, they're going to probably score a lot of points, but they won't face that much resistance as they catch up. This offense was designed around a need to score points with inferior talent at its skill position players, and yet they do have talent. I'm more than comfortable if you leave your draft with Christian Kirk as your wide receiver 2, but he's going as a low-end 3 to a high-end 4. Another wide receiver whose ADP is just ridiculous is Deebo Westbrook, and Deebo is one of the most undervalued wide receivers this season because look what he did last year. Last year with Blake Bortles running the show, he was the wide receiver 33 in half PPR scoring, yet he's currently going off the board as a wide receiver 40. So already right there, let's just pretend Bortles is still the quarterback, he's a value. But we all know how good Blake Bortles is, right? Last season, he had the second lowest completion percentage above expectation, with Foles having the second highest. Also, as per Gus Lowe, Foles ranked top 15 in completion percentage, yards per attempt, touchdown percentage, and passer rating when targeting slot wide receivers last season. What was Bortles? Well, he was outside the top 30 in every single one of those stats. Deebo has already shown that he can produce with the worst quarterback in the league, and now he gets a massive upgrade. Plus, consider the offense. He's competing with Keelan Cole and Chris Conley for targets. Maybe Lee makes a return, but it's looking less and less likely by the day. Deebo has my 27th highest projection among wide receivers, but like I said, he's coming off the board as a wide receiver 40. This is another guy who you could realistically start as your wide receiver 2 after going running back heavy and grabbing an early tight end in the early rounds of your draft, because there's no way he should be going as late as he is. Third wide receiver on the list is Curtis Samuel, and this has been a player we've loved the entire offseason, and while his ADP has gone up, it's still not even close to high enough. Samuel was an early second round pick 2 years ago, but he missed most of his rookie season and then part of last year due to injury. When he came back last year, he showed really nice growth in his route running, and he commanded 8 targets per game over the final 5 weeks. Plus, let's not forget how young this kid is. This video will be posted on his 23rd birthday. Deebo Samuel, the 49ers rookie wide receiver, is half a year older than Curtis Samuel, and he's a rookie. We always want receivers to produce when they're younger. That's why a lot of times we look at college breakout age. When a receiver can break out when they are young, that correlates very nicely to production as a wide receiver in the NFL. Well, he was productive in an early age in college, then he was productive last season at a very young age in the pros. Now he turned to training camp this summer. Well, how's he doing? All the reports are he's taken a massive step forward in his third season, and he's now a phenomenal route runner. There are some that suggest he could legitimately be this team's number one wide receiver this season. I still like DJ Moore because a lot of the same sentiment is true for him as well, but Moore is coming off the board as the wide receiver 26, whereas Samuel is coming off the board as the wide receiver 41. I have Samuel right now as my wide receiver 34, and I'm trying to get him in every league possible. If you want to see my full rankings along with my projections and player notes, then check them out at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that's enough about wide receiver. Let's move on to some running backs, and we're going to start off with Matt Breida. People still aren't drafting Breida no matter how much I talk about him. He's still coming off the board as that running back 50 to 52 kind of range, and that's the most insane thing that I've ever heard. He was just top 5 in yards per carry, ranking ahead of Gordon and Mack in yards per carry after contact, while also ranking first in receiving grade among running backs with at least 30 targets. He did all of this, battling through ankle, shoulder, and knee injuries last season, while splitting time with other running backs, because that's the thing. Everyone wants to point to a committee. They want to say, I can't draft running backs on the 49ers because it's Coleman and Breida splitting. Well, Alfred Morris, Jeff Wilson, and Mostert combined for 211 carries last season. So you look at that, they're not going to get the ball this season. I mean, Morris isn't even on the team. So it's really not that big of a concern, especially when you consider McKinnon struggling to even get onto the field. I mean, he's now going to be out for the next 2 weeks at least, and they're already bringing into question his ability in week 1. They've been using Breida all over the formation in camp, and we should see both him and Coleman on the field plenty this season. I want to draft players on teams with good coaching staffs because I know they're going to be used properly. Well, the 49ers are extremely well coached, and they are going to surprise people with how good their offense is this season. They're going to score a good amount of touchdowns, and that's one area that Breida was lacking last season. He was pretty unlucky in the touchdown department. So if he can bump that up, and they can potentially move the ball a little better in other areas, because they were pretty unlucky with injuries last season, then he's going to have a really good year, and his ADP is just an absolute joke. So get him as well on as many teams as possible. He's up to my running back 35, so there's really no reason you shouldn't be able to get him. Next running back is Myles Sanders, and we've said for a while that he's easily the most talented running back on the Eagles roster. His height-adjusted speed score, burst score, agility score, SparkX score, they're all above the 75th percentile. He was a really good receiving back in college. His first 2 years, he was backing up Barkley, but then he had a nice productive third year as the starter. After listening to beat reporters and coaches' comments, it's fairly clear that they share a similar sentiment. But the reason you're drafting Sanders is for his combination of floor and upside. He's currently being taken in that 8th, 9th round kind of range, so that's the point of the draft where you're not taking your starting running back. Like, even if you go RB0, it's pretty unlikely you get to the 8th and 9th round and you're still looking for a starting running back. Like, you're filling out your bench at that point. So even if he starts the season a little bit slow, that's not why we're drafting him. We're not drafting him for weeks 1 through 4. We're drafting him for how amazing he's going to be when he takes over that starting job, because it's going to happen at some point. I mean, the only possible way he doesn't take over the majority of carries at some point this season is if he gets hurt. He's better than Jordan Howard in every aspect of the game. So when he takes over, he's going to be the lead back on one of the best offenses in football, running behind a top 3 offensive line, and he'll face one of the lowest rates of 8+ defenders in the box because of his ability in pass catching, plus the fact that they can't just load the box on a team with Carson Wentz on it. So combine all of that together, he's got the floor because he's going to be productive even in a committee, but he's got that huge ceiling with receiving and touchdown upside to go along with very likely efficiency on the ground. Last running back we're going to talk about is David Montgomery, and I've been waiting a little bit to go over my take on Montgomery until it was clear how they're going to use him, how much they're going to have that split between him, Cohen, and Davis. But we look at who this kid is, and he has the single season record for the most missed tackles forced in college. Plus, he holds second place. So he's got the best 2 seasons. He's also a very good receiving back, which is huge for him. Over the first 3 seasons of Jordan Howard's career with the Bears, which has been the last 3 years, he's had 252, 276, and 250 carries, all between 20 and 29 receptions. That's resulted in fantasy finishes of 10, 12, and 20 in his first 3 years. Those are important stats when looking at Montgomery this season because we know they want to use him as a receiving back much more than they did with Jordan Howard. And Jordan Howard's still able to get 20 receptions last season when Cohen still had 71. So even in a year where Tariq Cohen had 71 receptions, Jordan Howard was able to get 20. Given how good Montgomery is in that aspect of the game, we can give him a floor of around 30 as a worst case scenario. He's also their clear goal line back, which is a role that's going to produce 8 to 10 touchdowns on the ground. And if you combine that floor of 30 with a super conservative projection of 234 carries with 9.8 projected total touchdowns when you add in receiving, he finishes as my 16th highest projected running back. Again, with those ultra conservative numbers. So unless something catastrophic happens and he goes down with like an ACL tear or something, this is a guy you need to be targeting early in drafts because he's going to be very productive in this offense. So those are the top 6 ADP steals this season. Of course, ADPs are going to change as we make our way through August, but as of right now, it's just a complete joke how late some of these guys are going. And remember, you can stay up to date on my latest rankings and projections at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that's the end of this one. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? If you're new here, how about subscribing to the channel? But thanks for watching.